So now we're going to be moving into the social justice experiment. So we have all seen these, but how much do they really matter? What did they change? Are we going to discuss ways on how to find who your ally will be on a college campus and beyond? How to cut through the white noise and get into difficult and productive conversations. Your ally should not post a trendy hashtag on Instagram, and that should not be the only thing. Your ally should roll up their sleeves and get dirty with you. So first, our first person who we will have is Matt Stump. He is the director of the academic advising in the agricultural sciences. His passion for helping students plan, dream, and launch their careers is complementary to his mission to motivate people of all ages, races, and ethnic backgrounds to enter meaningful conversations that evoke change. He has spent the majority of his higher education career at Penn State University at Altoona, the College of Engineering, and the College of Agricultural Sciences. With a unique background in psychology, communications, leadership, behavioral health, and public speaking, Stump's diversity in these areas represent a culmination of his life experiences in education. As a graduate of Liberty University with a master's degree in human services, counseling, and executive leadership, he began his professional career in a full-time minister. These very experiences further fuel his desire to motivate individuals towards broadening their perspective on issues that often venture into uncomfortable truths of our world. These conversations aim him to encourage an ethical and informed approach to include, inspire, and ultimately move individuals to venture more comfortably and uncomfortably. Without further notice, I would like to welcome you, Matt Stump.
Hey, thanks, Kiara. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Good, good. I was so glad to be listening to a lot of that last session. Man, it's so powerful to hear how we are different, but we all have a lot of things that are very similar. So I'm gonna share my screen this way, and that way you can still see me, even though you may not want to. But I have fun with this. I am so thankful to Penn State Admissions for doing a program like this. And it's been going on for a long time, and I'm just honored to be able to come and be a part of this. And I hope that this is just a great intro into what Carlos Wiley is going to talk about after me. I mean, you that are still here and on this call, you're in for a treat. And so I'm going to get out of the way a little bit. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am, and how I got to be where I am and why I love talking about these things. And I did entitle it More Than a Hashtag, just because it's got to be more than just putting something cool on Twitter. It's got to be more than putting up a nice picture on Instagram. It's got to be more than that. There's got to be some action behind it. But also, there's more to a hashtag than just the letters that are there. When you see hashtag Black Lives Matter, there are people behind that hashtag that matter. There are things that have happened to people that are putting people down, and that's why we have to use that kind of hashtag. So when you think about this idea of more than a hashtag, I want you to think about it both of those ways. That there should be action behind it, and also there's a story behind that hashtag. A little bit of history about me. My dad has been a pastor for close to 50 years. Actually, I was in pastoral ministry for about 18 years. So I've been around church and those kind of things. And so I enjoy that. But an interesting thing that happened to me that sort of got me started on this journey. When I was little, I was about 4 or 5. We moved into a really poor neighborhood, and my dad was the pastor of an all-black church. And so this started just kind of my I'll call it curiosity behind racism, and thoughtfulness behind racism, like just what is going through somebody's mind. Because when I was growing up, I didn't see it. Obviously, I'm not a black guy. But even when I was in that church, they treated us beautifully. My family treated them beautifully. And so I didn't see it. And so it took some time for me to get out into the world and see the things going on. But that just started my curiosity to this. And so I went through junior high and high school. I was never in the same grade or same school 2 years in a row until I went to sixth to seventh grade. All right. So moving kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all those different schools, different people. The way that I connected with people was through baseball. I loved baseball. I was pretty good at it. I wanted to go to college for it. I had other plans after that, but that's how I connected. So even in that, I didn't see racism. There was a lot of multicultural kids in where I was playing, and so I was playing when there were some Latino kids on my team, there were some Black kids on my team, there was me. So lots of things going on. But through that, I got to see the different aspects of what was going on around me. And then I got to central Pennsylvania, right, where I call home still to this day. If you didn't know, central PA has this stigma of being a pretty racist place. And there's some pockets of this that kind of permeates more than what most people think. And that's when my eyes were open to, wow, there's some things going on here that just aren't right. And so I went through high school, got to college, went down to Parkersburg, West Virginia, not known for its diversity. And so I started school there, went on a mission trip on my spring break, and we were going down to Birmingham, Alabama. And my whole thought process getting ready for this was, I'm going to go serve Birmingham. I'm going to go help little kids. We're going to go do some after school stuff, and I'm going to do the serving, and they're going to see this, right? I was wrong. My mind was blown in Birmingham, Alabama. I did go and we did some cool stuff and got to be with kids, and that did change me a little. But what changed me was I got to walk through the Civil Rights Museum with a woman who lived it. And I don't mean like her grandma told her about, no, she lived it. Where we're walking through the Civil Rights Museum and she's picking out people in the pictures and saying, oh, that's so-and-so, and that's so-and-so. I used to babysit them. She actually found a number of pictures that were her in there. She's never been through that until we went through it in 1997. And she was finding pictures of herself in this museum. And then we went through the Baptist church where there was a bombing. And she told us the stories of when she babysat two of these little girls that were killed. And something clicked in my mind, in my brain. Where I said, this is real. This is actually something that happens and still happens. It was way before phones and hashtags and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. But I knew there was something more to this. And I wanted to continue that. I wanted to help people see that. So when I got into campus ministry and I was working with college students, we wanted to take a group to a place that could help them see that there's more to this. And it was around 2007, we took a group to Mendenhall, Mississippi. We drove into this little town, and it's about an hour or so off the coast. It wasn't too long after Hurricane Katrina. I think I had the date right in there. Wasn't too long after Hurricane Katrina. And so we drive in and get set up in this little area where we were going to set up, and we went to bed and then woke up the next morning, and You could go outside and there was a set of train tracks. And it divided the city absolutely in half. Where on one side was beautiful, might have been in magazines. If you would have told me that there was a hurricane there not too long before that, I'd have told you were lying. Like nothing was out of place on that side of the tracks. But on the other side of the tracks, nothing looked like it had been touched since the hurricane. There was still standing water in some of the buildings that we were going to clean out. And I'm sure you can guess that the black side didn't get any of the money and help, and the white side of the tracks did. And so that's where I come from. And that's the background I come from and that I've seen. And so as we start, I saw this sign at one of the protests I went to this past summer. And it's still my Facebook background. It might be my Facebook background forever. I don't know. But this is how I try and approach these difficult racial conversations. As a white man, I can never walk a mile. I can't even walk a step. I would put that in there. I can't even walk a step in a black man's shoes. But I can lace mine up. I can walk beside him. And I can say, I stand with you. So there's action. And that's what I love about these events. That you guys are coming in, you're excited, you're accepted to Penn State, and I'm excited for you. I hope there's some College of Ag Sciences students that are on the call. That's where I work. I love those students. I love working with college students all across the university. But I hope you get excited for this. And you know that this college thing is going to be fun. But I also hope it challenges you a little bit. I hope there's some things that happen in these conversations that you have that make you think and they make you want to try and do better for someone else that may be coming up behind you. I want to tell you a quick story. It's a friend of mine. He was raised in a single parent home and he was picked on all the time growing up. And his mom was white and his dad was black. And he never knew where he fit in. He wasn't white enough to be with the white kids and black enough to be with the black kids. And he just dealt with racism and persecution from both sides. And he stood in the middle. His outlet was football. He loved football. He was really good at football. But when he got to college, he was out on a date with a girl and he rolled through a stop sign. Yes, he was wrong, right? Like, he rolled through a stop sign. You're supposed to stop. But what happened after that is really wrong. He rolled through the stop sign and there were the lights and the siren and he pulled off to the side of the road and he did everything he's supposed to do. Right? Keep hands on the wheel. Don't reach for anything. He did everything he was supposed to do. Police came up, started asking questions, kind of looked over, saw on the passenger seat there was a girl. When they saw the girl, they made their way over to her side and started asking her kind of odd questions. You know, like, where is this guy taking you? Are you okay? Do you feel threatened? And they went on and on. And you see, let's play a game called Let's Guess the Race, right? Of this girl. And you guessed it, she was white. And the whole time for 25 minutes, they kept asking and pushing. And I told my friend, I said, I was angry. I was words I won't say on here because it's an official sanctioned Penn State event, but I was angry. I wanted to call up the police. I didn't. I wanted to go to the police station, find out who did this and do some things, right? Like, I was so furious. And I told him, I said, I'm going to make sure that I can do something to help. I said, I couldn't do something then, but I want to do something to help. Fast forward a couple years. I was working at Penn State Altoona. I was the coordinator of equity, diversity, and campus ministry. And 2014, Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown was shot and killed. And it was one of the first times that the country took notice. Protests and riots everywhere, all over the country. But I'm in Altoona. What am I going to do? Right? Like, I'm not anywhere near there. And I was working at Altoona, and I'm like, man, what can we do? And my mind automatically flipped back to that night that my friend was harassed by the police. And so I asked our Black Student Association, our African Student Association, Latino, Latin American Student Association, the Caribbean Student Association. I asked all of them. Those were groups that I worked with day in, day out. I said, do you think we can get some students together, and would they be willing to talk to our campus police and the Altoona police? Maybe. So we did. We want to talk about a uncomfortable situation. It wasn't comfortable for anybody. Nobody in there. I'm the one that put it together. I wasn't comfortable. The students were not comfortable. The police that were there were not comfortable, but there was healing. Students talked about things that happened to them off campus and in the neighborhoods, and the police talked about when they were disrespected against. And there were tears shed, and there were hugs, and there was healing just a little bit towards this. And see, when you look at diversity education, how I look at it, it isn't complicated, but it's relentless. Think about it. It's not difficult. All I did was I brought in a group of people who I cared about in the one room and said, let's talk. Let's talk. Let's get uncomfortable with this situation, but let's talk. It's not hard. Fear gets in the way, right? That fear could have got in the way of me very quickly. And that's what we've got to get through. The fear of differences, the fear of the unknown, fear of what others are going to think about me. We have to be relentless, nonstop, persistent. And that's why I love higher ed. That's why I love being around college students. Because you see these hashtags, and we've seen these, and I couldn't even fit all the ones that I've seen on. And we understand what they stand for. But I want to just make sure we see that it is more than that. Booker T. Washington had this quote. He said, I had no schooling whatsoever when I was a slave. And actually, on several occasions, I went as far as the schoolhouse door with one of my young mistresses. I had the feeling that getting into the schoolhouse would be the same as getting into paradise. Think about that. This man thought that just being able to get in the door would be like getting into paradise. You see, I think it is paradise. I think being at a university is a wonderful privilege. We just talked about those. And I hope that you don't forget that. It's a privilege. But see, the nice thing is the door's already being opened to you. It's already saying, hey, come on in. Let's talk about these things. And privilege is a pretty loaded word right now. We just went through the privilege walk. And I'm sure there are some of you that were thinking like, ooh, boy, I don't know if I want to do this. But as it went on, you got into it a little bit more. It's school, internet, phone, being able to get educated. They're all privilege. My white skin, straight identity, Christian background afford me certain privileges. I know that. I own that. I live in that. But I strive to engage the conversation to get this moving. But to do that, I have to listen. And for me, that's hard. That's a hard thing for me to do, is listen. But those days after Ferguson, I did a ton of listening. In the days since, and last summer, I did a lot of listening. I could hear pain and terror, anger. I would just try and listen, because I can't walk a mile in a black man's shoes, but I want to lace mine up and stand beside them. You see, I try to set my character of my whiteness and gender, and I try to set it at the door, and I want to listen. And I know that I have to be open to these conversations. I have to engage these things willingly. I have to participate in things like this to be part of the conversation. As I sat last summer at these protests, listening to people that I knew, that I cared about, talk about the things that have happened to them in my city, I cried. It hurt. And some of you may have already disagreed with something that I said, and that's cool. Disagreements aren't bad. Disagreements, we can work through those things. When we have a disagreement, we have to have a dialogue to get to a common spot. We need to have uncomfortable conversations. This conversation about race and racism needs to happen more often. I hope it's happening at your high schools, but I even hope even bigger, that's something, that it's happening in your homes, that you're talking about these things. We talked about it openly. I've got 3 kids. I have 2 adopted daughters. They're my daughter-in-laws. And I have a grandson and another grandbaby on the way. And we talk about these things because it matters. One of my heroes right now, his name's Emmanuel Acho. He wrote this book called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And it was uncomfortable for me to read. There were some moments where it caused some friction. And I didn't like it. I didn't want to keep reading some of it. But you see, when we see friction, most of us think negative, right? Like, as soon as I said the word friction, you probably even had someone in mind that you're having a disagreement with, maybe even right now. And you wanted to get mad at them. But when you really think about and get down to the definition of friction, the definition is this. This is so important. Friction is the resistance that one surface or object encounters when moving over another. That's incredible. Listen, the resistance that one surface or object encounters when moving over another. We need friction to get things moving. Your car, if you have a internal combustion car, not one of those cool like Teslas or something, but if you have an internal combustion car, there is friction inside the cylinder, which is why we change the oil in our cars, is to keep that lubricated so it doesn't get too hot and start to seize up on it. So we need friction inside the cylinder so that the piston moves up and down, so that it can move the transmission, so that it can move the tires. We need that. We need friction to get this conversation of race moving in a direction that's going to make something happen. But did you hear what's also involved in that internal combustion engine? There's not only the friction, but the oil to make sure that it continues to move. We need that. And it's conversations like this that I hope are that oil. I hope it's the oil to get things moving in a good direction. You see, when we were teaching our children, when we were bringing them up and having all kinds of conversations with them, I didn't teach them to be colorblind. I don't believe in that. I don't think we should tell our children that we should be colorblind. I think it leads to more problems. I think that the differences there can end up perpetuating systemic racism instead of helping it. So what we tried to teach is what this concept that Kendi wrote about is. I want to teach them to be anti-racist, hate racism. That's okay. Get rid of that. That's fine. And there was actually someone that wrote in a magazine, Oprah magazine interview, Samantha Vicinity is her name. And she wrote about colorblindness. And she said this, she says, not seeing race denies systemic racism. And I was like, man, that's so true. That if we don't see it, I love seeing race. I think it's beautiful. I think there's some beautiful things behind it. And there's some beautiful things that each race brings into this wonderful place. So we can't have anger fighting out on it. We need to have these conversations back and forth with it. And I think hashtags are great. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I'll show you all those things here at the end, but I'm on all those. And it's great for getting people organized. I think that's why the protests all over the country this year for George Floyd and for everyone else, I think that's why they spread so fast, or because of hashtags. But there has to be more to it. There has to be the action. You see, we need people in government offices that are going to make changes so that systemic racism doesn't keep going. We need doctors of color to come into college, get educated, go out into neighborhoods, and be a part of that. That's a hashtag in motion. We need teachers of color that teach all kids that we have all kinds of colors of people, because that's what makes a beautiful mosaic. We need researchers of color to find cures for diseases. We need judges and lawyers of color to fight systemic racism. We need farmers of color, the police of color, baristas of color, admissions reps of color, musicians, poets, computer scientists, agricultural scientists, mathematicians, mayors, governors, CEOs of color to change the world. Because I want to encourage you, I don't want you to just be dreamers. I want you to be builders of dreams. I want your dreams to inspire you to become pioneers in ways that people have never seen these things coming. And here I've got 4 things I think you can do right now to help fight racism and be more than a hashtag. First one, choose to step up and support racial justice. Step up. If you see something negative happening, step up with it. Yes, that's difficult. No, that's not something that's always fun or you get the good pat on the back to do. But it makes a huge difference in the life of the person you step up for. Number 2, engage in uncomfortable conversations. Have conversations with people that don't act or think like you do to see what's going on the other side. there are hundreds of people at Penn State. I don't know if it's thousands, but I can go to hundreds of faculty and staff that are your allies. You've never met them, but they're your allies. They're not just going to sit there and be like, oh yeah, put this on my phone and I hope it works. Hashtag I care. Right? No, they do work. They fight alongside of you for injustices. When there was a protest in State College, there were so many faculty and staff, even during the summer, that came out for that. So I want you to know that there are people that are your allies when you get to Penn State. Third thing, get connected. Find somewhere to get connected. Whether that's you helping coach a Little League baseball team to show them, because you can start to have those kind of conversations with the parents and all that. Or you get connected that you're doing something after school. Get connected. And the fourth thing, educate yourself. You know, you're coming to Penn State to get an education, to get that piece of paper at the end so you can raise your hands and be excited about it and be pumped and screaming and yelling. But also, don't forget about the education outside the classroom. That educate yourself in things like this, on knowing how to be an ally, how to find an ally, knowing and understanding that you have people that care about you. And you know what I'm excited about? You. Yeah, I'm excited about you. I'm so excited that there are so many students that have this attitude coming into college that enough's enough, that we want to do something. We want to make this place a better place. I know I don't remember the exact times and all that stuff, that each year the graduating class gives a gift back to Penn State as a university, just to say thank you. And they, you know, you can go all over campus and you can see gift from the class of 1962 or whatever, and it's a statue and this and that, and it's awesome. It's so cool to realize that these classes are like, man, thank you for what you're doing. There's been something happening the last 5 or 6 years. None of them are physical things that you can go and see. One class gave their gift to our counseling and psychological services office. One class gave it to the Lions Pantry, which is our food pantry for food insecurity. You know, so it's these students that are thinking about more than who they are, but thinking about this Penn State family that's so much bigger. And I love that. That's what gets me fired up. That's what gets me excited. And sometimes, Manuel Acho said it this way. He was talking about playing dominoes, and not like the fun way sitting out back on the table playing dominoes, counting the numbers, but like stand them up on their ends and knock them down and watch them all fall down playing dominoes. And he said it's one thing to know that you hit the first one, but it's another thing to see the 100th knocked over. And sometimes it's hard because you don't see number 100. But that's not our job. Our job is to make an impact on the one next to us. And they'll make an impact on the one next to them, and next to them, and next to them. And that's where the domino effect comes in. And I'm so excited to see what you guys have in store. I want to see what you can do to be more than a hashtag. I hope we have some cool hashtags when you get here and that you're doing things, but I want you to be more than that. I want you to impact our community. I want you to impact our university. I want you to change things far beyond what anybody on this call ever thought about tonight. I hope that I never have to see a hashtag with a person's name on it ever again. I hope that through conversations like this, that we can start to see change, and that you realize that you have the power to make that happen. I would love for